MK-Ultra est un programme de la CIA commencé en 1953. Il s'agissait de trouver des moyens chimiques et radiologiques pour exercer un contrôle sur l'esprit humain. C'est-à-dire que les médecins s'employaient à trouver la bonne formule. Quelle substance chimique injecter, à quel dosage, combiner à quel type de rayonnement, quelle onde, quelle fréquence, quelle intensité, pour rentrer dans l'esprit d'une personne et tourner une personne normale en un assassin. Pour faire ces expériences, la CIA utilisait comme couverture une fondation, la Human Ecology Fund ou Human Ecology Society. Donc imaginez à l'époque, please donate to the Human Ecology Fund. Vous donnez votre argent en pensant aider l'environnement, alors que vous êtes directement en train de financer l'horreur absolue. Leurs cobayes étaient des personnes non consentantes, qu'ils allaient chercher dans les prisons, dans les hôpitaux psychiatriques, parmi les prostituées. On ciblait ces catégories de gens, pas par hasard, parce que ce sont des gens qui sont incapables de se défendre. Si demain ils parviennent à se rendre à la police pour porter plainte, qui va les écouter? Est-ce qu'on va écouter une prostituée, un fou, ou bien la CIA et ses médecins renommés? Ainsi, on les forçait à subir des expériences, des prisonniers, des malades mentaux, des prostituées, et j'ai oublié une catégorie, des enfants, de jeunes filles, qui ont témoigné des dizaines d'années plus tard. On va écouter les deux témoignages et je reprends après.
I'm Christy Nicola, born July of 1962, rendering me 32 years of age. I was a subject in radiation as well as mind control and drug experiments performed by a man I knew as Dr. Green. My parents were divorced around 1966, and Donald Richard Ebner, my natural father, was involved with Dr. Green in the experiments. I was a subject from 1966 to 1976. Dr. Green performed radiation experiments on me in 1970, focusing on my neck, throat, and chest, 1972 focusing on my chest, and my uterus in 1975. Each time I became dizzy, nauseous, and threw up. All these experiments were performed on me in conjunction with mind control techniques and drugs in Tucson, Arizona. Dr. Green was using me mostly as a mind control subject from 1966 to 1973. His objective was to gain control of my mind and train me to be a spy assassin. The first significant memory took place at Kansas City University in 1966. Don Ebner took me there by plane when my mom was out of town. I was in what looked like a laboratory and there seemed to be other children. I was strapped down, naked, spread eagle, on a table, on my back. Dr. Green had electrodes on my body, including my head. He used what looked like an overhead projector and repeatedly said he was burning different images into my brain while a red light flashed aimed at my forehead. In between each sequence, he used electric shock on my body and told me to go deeper and deeper, while repeating each image would go deeper into my brain, and I would do whatever he told me to do. I felt drugged because he had given me a shot before he started the procedure. When it was over, he gave me another shot. The next thing I remember, I was with my grandparents again in Tucson, Arizona. I was 4 years old. You can see from this experiment that Dr. Green used trauma, drugs, post-hypnotic suggestion, and more trauma in an effort to gain total control of my mind. He used me in radiation experiments both for the purposes of determining the effects of radiation on various parts of my body and to terrorize me as an additional trauma in the mind control experiments. Dr. Green moved on to wanting me to kill dolls that looked like real children. I stabbed a doll with a spear once after being severely traumatized, but the next time I refused. He used many pain induction techniques but as I got older, I resisted more and more. He often tied me down in a cage, which was near his office. Between 1972 and 1976, he and his assistants were sometimes careless and left the cage unlocked. Whenever physically possible, I snuck into his office and found files with reports and memos addressed to CIA and military personnel. Included in these files were project, subproject, subject, and experiment names with some code numbers for radiation and mind control experiments, which I have submitted in your written documentation. I was caught twice, and Dr. Green ruthlessly used electric shock, drugs, spun me on a table, put shots in my stomach and my back, dislocated my joints, and hypnotic techniques to make me feel crazy and suicidal. Because of my rebellion and growing lack of cooperation, they gave up on me as a spy assassin. Consequently, the last 2 years, 1974 to 1976, Dr. Green used various mind control techniques to reverse the spy assassin messages to self-destruct and death messages. His purpose? He wanted me dead, and I struggled to stay alive all of my adult life. I believe it is by the grace of God that I am still alive. These horrible experiments have profoundly affected my life. I developed multiple personality disorder because Dr. Green's goal was to split my mind into as many parts as possible so he could control me totally. He failed.
Between the years of 1957 and 1984, I became a pawn in a government scheme whose ultimate goal was mind control and to create the perfect spy, all through the use of chemicals, radiation, drugs, hypnosis, electric shock, isolation in tubs of water, sleep deprivation, brainwashing, verbal, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. I was exploited unwittingly for nearly 3 decades of my life, and the only explanations given to me were that, quote, the end justifies the means, and, quote, I was serving my country in their bold effort to fight communism. I can only summarize my circumstances by saying they took an already abused 7-year-old child and compounded my suffering beyond belief. The saddest part is, I know for a fact that I was not alone. There were countless other children in my same situation, and there was no one to help us. Until now. I've already submitted as much information as possible, including conversations overheard of the people, agencies responsible. I'm able to report all this to you in such detail because of my photographic memory and the arrogance of the doctors, the arrogance of the people involved. They were certain they would always control my mind. Although the process of recalling these atrocities is not an easy one, nor is it without some danger to myself and my family, I feel the risk is worth taking. Dr. L. Wilson Green, who claimed to have received $50 million from the Edgewood Chemical and Radiology Laboratory as part of the TSD, or Technical Science Division of the CIA, once described to Dr. Charles Brown that, quote, children were used as subjects because they were more fun to work with and cheaper, too. They needed lower profile subjects than soldiers or government people, so only young, willing females would do. Besides, he said, I like scaring them. They in the agency think I'm a god, creating subjects and experiments for whatever deviant purposes Sid and James can think up. Sid being Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, James, Dr. James Hamilton. In 1958, I was to be tested, they told me, by some important doctors from the society, or the Human Ecology Society. And I was instructed to cooperate. I was told not to look at anyone's faces and not to ignore any names, as this was a very secret project. But I was told to be brave, and all these things would help me forget. Naturally, as most children do, I did the opposite and remembered as much as I could. Dr. John Gittinger tested me, Dr. Cameron gave me the shocks, and Dr. Green the x-rays. Once a crude remark was made by Dr. Gottlieb about a certain possible leak over New Orleans East involving a large group of retarded children who are being given massive doses of radiation. He asked, why was Wilson so worried about a few retarded kids? After all, they would be the least likely to spill the beans. All these atrocities did occur to me and to countless other children, and all under the guise of defending our country. It is because of the cumulative effects of exposure to radiation, chemicals, drugs, pain, and subsequent mental and physical distress that I've been robbed of the ability to work and even to bear any children of my own. I believe that every citizen of this nation has the right to know just what is fact and what is fiction. It is our greatest protection against the possibility of this ever happening again. In conclusion, I can offer you no more than what I've given you today, the truth.
Est-ce que le docteur a réussi? Pour frapper la poupée, le docteur a dû traumatiser la fille sévèrement. Est-ce que c'est ça, contrôler l'esprit? Moi, je veux que tu fasses quelque chose. Tu refuses. Je vais te pointer un pistolet sur la tempe. C'est sûr que c'est très persuasif, mais j'exerce aucun contrôle sur ton esprit. Contrôler l'esprit humain, se prendre pour Dieu, parce que c'est de ça dont il s'agit, est une entreprise vouée à l'échec dès le début. Et eux y ont cru. Ils y ont vraiment cru, parce qu'ils ont été trompés. Trompés par qui? Prenons Genèse au chapitre 3. Le serpent dit à la femme, « Vous ne mourrez nullement, mais Dieu sait qu'au jour où vous en mangerez, vous serez comme des dieux. » C'était un mensonge, et la CIA est tombée dans le même mensonge. MK Ultra a échoué. Par contre, ce qu'ils ont réussi à faire, c'est développer des techniques de torture. MK Ultra, c'est pas un programme de contrôle mental, c'est un programme de torture. Faire souffrir les gens, déclencher des traumatismes, des effets secondaires, des séquelles, des maladies. Il y a même des gens qui sont morts à cause de ces expériences. Tuer des gens, là ils ont réussi. Le programme a pris fin dans les années 70. Mais quel lien peut-on faire avec notre époque? MK Ultra recherchait la bonne combinaison de moyens chimiques et radiologiques. Injection et radiation, ça vous rappelle rien? C'est pas exactement ce qu'on vit aujourd'hui? Injection, radiation, vaccin, 5G. Mais le champ d'application s'est élargi. On ne s'attaque plus seulement aux personnes vulnérables aux États-Unis, mais à tous les peuples de toutes les nations. Quelles seront les conséquences? On les voit déjà. Les conséquences sont déjà là, ce sont les mêmes que MK Ultra. Des effets secondaires, des maladies, des séquelles, des morts.